Imagine driving in the dead of night on a road that is not lit well. Upon this road, you encounter a set of railroad tracks that give you an uncomfortable feeling, as if something bad happened here a long time ago. You can't put your finger on it, but you get the urge to cross the railroad as soon as possible. Suddenly, your car stops working as you try to go through the railroad tracks. You try starting your vehicle, but for some unknown reason, it won't start on. That's when you start to hear childish giggling, even though you are alone inside your vehicle. You start to realize that your car is moving on its own. You turn around to see if someone is pushing you, when you realize no one's behind you. As your vehicle crosses this mysterious railroad, it begins to work again. You immediately begin to leave this creepy place and turn to the closest gas station. Once you have arrived at the gas station, you examine your vehicle and discover handprints on the back of your vehicle. This is one of the many cases of the mysterious place known as San Antonio's infamous ghost tracks, located at 2902 Shane Road, San Antonio, Texas. It's one of the many unknown histories of San Antonio, Texas that few San Antonians know about, until now. I am your host, Streetlight Historian, and today I will explore the tragic story of the infamous ghost tracks of San Antonio, Texas. Although there are many versions about the ghost tracks, the one that stands out the most is the story about a nun driving a school bus. The website Ghost City Tours does an excellent job of describing this tragic legend on its website. Between the 1930s and 1940s, on a dark night, a nun was driving a school bus filled with children to their homes after a field trip. They were heading down on Shane Road, but when approaching the railroad crossing, the bus abruptly stalled out on the tracks. Most of the students were sleeping, so she was quietly attempting to start the engines back up. It was then a train emerged, seemingly out of nowhere, as its headlamp was burnt out. It offered no warning of its impending arrival. It was too late to evacuate the children, as the train was moving too fast. The nun desperately and frantically turned the key, making one last attempt to restart the bus, just as the train smashed through the bus, cutting it in half. The nun was thrown through the windshield, but miraculously survived. The young children were not as fortunate. They were all killed instantly. A few weeks later, the nun, guilt-ridden and heartbroken, returned to the site of the accident. She was unable to continue on living in guilt. Thus, she decided to end her life. She parked her car on the tracks and sat there, waiting for the next train to come along. Later, when a train came into sight, speeding down towards her, in the same way as the tragic night, the nun began to hear small, familiar voices. Then, her car began to move forward as if it was being pushed from behind. The nun's car was rolled to safety just as the train roared by. In disbelief, the nun got out of her car and began looking around, expecting to find a good Samaritan. She saw not a single soul. She looked back at her car and noticed children's-sized handprints on the back of her trunk. It was then she realized that the ghost of her students had saved her life. The nun was then blessed with a newfound purpose in life, and she opened a school for orphans. She taught there till the day she died. While this is the end of the ghost track legend, between the 1960s to the present, there have been many reports of unexplained supernatural encounters at the infamous ghost tracks. People reported hearing children laughing, objects moving, sounds of incoming trains that don't appear, and finally, ghostly apparitions at the ghost tracks itself. The truth has been debated in San Antonio, with both residents and law enforcement officials wary of the legend. There have been countless reports of cars appearing to move on their own, with mysterious childlike prints showing up on vehicles afterwards. Some have also allegedly heard the voices and laughter of children while at the railroad tracks, especially at night. However, despite these stories, there are no records of any accidents ever occurring on the railroad tracks in San Antonio. Some believe the legend was inspired by another fatal accident that happened on December 1st, 1938, far away in Salt Lake City, Utah. The city was dealing with blizzard conditions, and a school bus carrying over 20 students aging from 12 to 18 was attempting to bring the kids home safe when the bus stalled out on the railroad tracks just as a 50-car freight train came hurtling their way. The aftermath was grisly, with every soul on the bus left dead. Is it possible that the news coverage of the Salt Lake City crash became blurred over time with San Antonio folklore, with later generations adopting the story as their own? If that is the case, why aren't there other similar stories throughout America? And why are there so many first-hand accounts at the railroad tracks in San Antonio? The mystery behind the ghost tracks may never truly be uncovered and will possibly live on as a mystery for many future generations to come. On October 19, 2018, it was announced to the public that the infamous ghost tracks would be demolished and be replaced with new, up-to-date railroad tracks and rail safety systems. While the Union Pacific Company was excited about updating this area of San Antonio, many citizens were saddened by the news that the infamous ghost track, which had become a local landmark for many generations of San Antonians, would be destroyed. This made the 2010s generation of San Antonians the last generation to experience the infamous ghost tracks. While the ghost tracks are indeed gone, both its legends and historical impacts will not be forgotten by the citizens of San Antonio, who to this day swear they experienced something supernatural happen there. Like any folklore, its legends live on through its people, and the lessons it teaches us still impact us to this very day.